The only way to see progress is to look behind you.
Right.
The horizon is always the horizon.
Yeah.
And if you're looking in the horizon and heading toward the horizon, it always looks forever away because it is. It's the nature of it, right? You never get to the horizon. And even like when you're climbing a hill, it's like, oh, but when I climb the hill and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm going down the hill. When did that happen?
Right.
Same sort of thing. So it's that backwards look.
Are you feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or uncertain about how to grow your business without sacrificing what really matters most? Welcome to The Business You Really Want, the show for women ready to build a sustainable, fully aligned business. Aligned with what, you ask? You, your values, your life. Seriously, it is possible. I'm Tonya Kubo, and along with business advisor extraordinaire Gwen Bortner, we're here to show you how.
If you're in business, you have had that moment. I know that you've had that moment because I've had that moment. You finally accomplished something that you have been working toward for months, maybe even years. You land the dream client, you hit that revenue goal, the magical 6 figures or the magical 7 figures. You hire team members, like you have people. It's no longer just you and the mouse in your pocket. You open a new location. And almost before you've even had the chance to celebrate, your brain's already on to the next thing. If you've ever wondered why success never seems to feel quite as satisfying as you expect it to, today's episode is for you. So Gwen, something that you have told me in the past, in fact, when we first started working together and you talked about your kind of proprietary way of assisting clients with goal setting, is that entrepreneurs are really, really good at setting goals, but they're not so good at noting when they achieve them or giving themselves credit for how far they've come. Where do you think that comes from?
It comes for a lot of entrepreneurs, and I'm going to define what I call a true entrepreneur is someone who just sees everything as an opportunity, right? There's business owners. I actually consider myself not an entrepreneur. I consider myself a business owner who sees a problem, knows how to solve it, will occasionally see an opportunity, but not like everything on the planet is an opportunity, right? But if you're dealing with a real entrepreneur, seeing all the opportunities, part of the problem is in their mind, if they've started addressing it, it's probably in their mind solved. And so they're on to the next thing. And what it looks like is that we move the goalpost before we get there, right? So we're running down the field, sticking with the football analogy, and we're running down the field and we're close. We're down to the 20-yard mark. We don't have that much further to go to actually get our touchdown. And we say, oh, wait, no, we're supposed to go to the other goalpost, which is, of course, 80 yards away. And we start going in that direction, right? Now, what really happens is usually then we actually achieve the goal, but we blow past it because we're already on to the next thing. We're already seeing the next thing. So moving to me, the goalposts is one of the things, because it's like, if we're getting close, there is this assumption that we will achieve it. And so in our mind, it's done, right? Before it's actually done. And then when it happens, it's like, oh, right. Yeah. 6 figures. Oh, right. Yeah. 7 figures. Yeah. And we don't think about it because now we're already in our mind past 6 figures. Right. We want to be to mid 6 figures. And so it's like, oh yeah, 6 figures, nothing, blah, 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 and our mind has gone past the thing sometimes before we get there. Right. The other thing is that's also why we're able to do what we're able to do, is that there is always another goalposts. There's always something else. I've been listening to some conversations with Dan Sullivan, who's the owner of Strategic Coach, and Joe Polish. And Dan talks about how long he wants to live. And I think it's 140. And he's in his 80s, I'm pretty sure at this point. I may be wrong on the details here. But they've been having conversations, and one of his things is he feels he's more ambitious now in his 80s than he was in his 70s, and he anticipates he'll be yet more ambitious in his 90s than he is in his 80s. And Dan is definitely a true entrepreneur mind, person. But part of it for him is, and the way he describes it, I'm obviously, giving the Reader's Digest version, and I would encourage you to go listen to some of the 10X talks. You'll find value in them. Is his thing is, once I know that I can do this hard thing, then I assume that I can do the next harder thing, and then I can do the next harder thing. And so his whole thing is, now that I'm in my 80s, I can see all of the hard things I've done, and it's like, okay, well, this next thing can't be that much harder than all of those things, so I'm going to keep pushing that limit. And I really think that is the natural entrepreneurial mind.
Yeah.
And so therefore, we don't necessarily take time to acknowledge the success because we are only looking out in the future all the time.
Yeah. And do you think that, I feel like this is what you said, but I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly, is that entrepreneurs are just naturally wired to look ahead. That is really the difference between the entrepreneur and the business owner.
I really do. I think it's definitely a piece. And, there's lots of research that says there is a limited, just that capacity in that is actually a natural tendency, and that's a little more, I'll say, DNA based. I'm not sure that's truly true, but that is a limited amount of the population that will do that in that kind of way. And but it is also what makes them successful, because they also treat the failure in a similar way.
Tell me what you mean by that.
So where it's like, oh, I hit six figures, but now my mind's already on to, middle five figures or middle six figures. When the thing doesn't work, it's like, okay, well, we're just going to do the next thing. They don't necessarily dwell on it and just circle on it and spend lots of time on it. Not that they won't spend some time on it, but they also don't get stuck there like, oh, well, that failed, so that means I can't do anything. It's much more like, okay, well, that way doesn't work, and they keep going. You look at many of the folks that are held up as very successful entrepreneurs, and a lot of them have gone through at least one, if not multiple, bankruptcies where, and they tend to be boys, not girls, when that's the case. But it is one of the things I've heard folks like, I can't possibly go bankrupt. It's going to ruin my life and da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, no, a lot of that's actually mythology. When you actually talk to people who've gone through, bankruptcies, it's like, nope, they're able to move on and make things happen and keep going when it needs to happen. Back to, they don't just I went bankrupt, which means I suck as an entrepreneur and I'm never going to be able to do this again. They're just like, okay, yeah, I made some bad choices. Let's not make that again. And away they go,
Right. So you were talking about Dan Sullivan's ambition, and I'm just wondering, is there a point where, God, more power to him wanting to live till he's 140. That is just not an aspiration I have. But is there a point where ambition like that stops serving you?
I think if it's actually being destructive, if it's causing you harm in any way. But in Dan's case, I don't see any evidence of that. I just see him saying, how can I make this better? How can I do this next thing? What is the next, opportunity? And back to, I think that comes a lot about your own, personality, right?
Yeah.
But I think it can be destructive where there is no satisfaction. Now, that's also not the case with Dan. One of the things that Dan Sullivan talks about is, what do I want? Not what do I need, but what do I want? Just for the sake of wanting it. And so he pays attention to achieving his wants, which means he also then has a level of satisfaction with what he's doing. It's the ambition is not out of a negative mindset. It's out of a positive mindset.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's where it can be detrimental if it's not managed well, is I suck. I never achieve any of my goals. Well, is that actually true? Maybe not. Maybe what's actually true is you never don't move the goalpost before you hit the goal. Right. So part of this is, how do we approach it? Do we use ambition as a way to continue to grow and improve and see the value of it? Or do we use ambition as a way to demean ourselves and be frustrated with lack of progress?
Yeah. Well, and also I think sometimes we use ambition to like we delay living under the guise of ambition, right? Like, I'm not going to do this thing. Lot. I won't do this until I hit 6 figures. I'm not going to do this thing until I hit 500,000. And, I won't sell my business until it's a $500,000 business.
Right. That somehow that's going to be a panacea. And I don't know if I've talked about it on this podcast or not, but one of the things that we have to remember is that the moment that you hit whatever that measurable goal is, it is truly just a moment in time. And the minute before and the minute afterwards actually are not going to be that different, because that's not the way life works. Yeah. So when you say, when I just hire someone, okay, the moment you hire someone, that is a moment. And it isn't going to instantly completely change. It's not like you're going to, transport and appear at a completely different timeline because you hired someone. You're still going to go through a linear process of what all of those things are, right? Of what all of that means. And when we put so much weight on it producing an emotional or physical result for us, it's always going to fail us. Right? The moment that we hit 6 figures, we don't magically have a new house.
No.
We don't magically have, all these things. It's not the way it works. The moment before we had 6 figures, we had 99,500. Right? It wasn't that it just landed. It was probably an additional $500 that put us over the edge. It wasn't, and then people are like, oh, but when I start getting a $100,000 client, yeah, but you didn't go from a $0 to a $100,000 client. You had a $500 client and a $5,000 client and a $25,000 and a $50,000 and a $75,000, and then poof, you had a $100,000. It's not this big jump that we think it is.
Right. Well, and we haven't talked about this in a long time, but one of the things that you have brought up a lot of times is, especially around ambition that is tied to revenue goal, is that, a $100,000 business has problems and challenges that a $50,000 business doesn't have. Likewise, a $500,000 business has issues that a $100,000 business doesn't have. And when you get to 7 figures, there's, it doesn't solve all of the issues. It just opens the door to some new ones. And so when you're constantly...
Or bigger versions of the old ones.
Right. Well, and sometimes it's like things that you could get away with ignoring or overlooking at 100K, right, are like deal breakers at a $500,000. because they get so much bigger with everything else, right? And it reminds me of, I worked with somebody several years ago, and we had launched a thing, and it was like $180,000 launch. And there was a client who was like, oh, like what I wouldn't give for $180,000 launch, like that would do this and that would do that and that would do that. And the owner said, well, but you have to realize that, you know, you're a solopreneur. $180,000 launch would be huge for you. But for us, like we have a much higher threshold for success. Like I've got 14 staffers, and quite honestly, $180,000 doesn't even cover payroll for the year. Like I get why you think that was a successful launch, but actually for us, it was a failure.
Right. Context matters.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing so far in this conversation is that while ambition isn't bad, it doesn't serve us if we're constantly thinking that we have to cross this line in order to be satisfied with our business, to have the business. I'll have the business I really want when XYZ in the somewhat foreseeable future. So if that isn't a good measurement of success, my question for you is, what is?
So it's one of the things that we focus on when we do our quarterly planning. And, you know, we just wrapped one up when we're, you know, relatively recently when we're filming this. And that's the thing, is looking back and saying, how far did I actually come from where I was, right? What progress did I make? Am I seeing a difference from where I was to where I am today? And entrepreneurs are horrible about that because we don't take time to look back, which is why we make it a very focused part of our quarterly process, is to take time and say, before we start looking to the future, we will look to the future, and we do the planning piece. We want to first say, what actually did get accomplished? Where did we move from and to? And, you know, we're typically looking at it as a quarter, but because we do this with our clients quarter after quarter after quarter, from time to time, the client will say, I can't even fathom how far I've come in the last 18 months, let's say, right? But if they hadn't been doing that, they would still say, I'm not successful. Right. Because they've moved the goalpost, they've changed the direction, they've done the things that entrepreneurs will do that aren't necessarily bad. I'm not actually saying that these are bad behaviors, but they don't see the progress, because the only way to see progress is to look behind you. Right. The horizon is always the horizon. Yeah. And if you're looking in the horizon and heading toward the horizon, it always looks forever away, because it is. It's the nature of it, right? You never get to the horizon. And even like when you're climbing a hill, it's like, oh, but when I climb the hill, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm going down the hill. When did that happen? Right. Because, you know, same sort of thing. So it's that backwards look, which, back to Dan Sullivan, that's one of the books he wrote, The Gap and the Gain. And that's really what that book is about. Is, are you looking only at the gap, the horizon, how far you have yet to go? Or are you occasionally looking backwards at the gain of what you've done? Right. And when I read that book, I mean, I'd been talking about it for years, and it was like, oh yeah, that's my whole review process. You've got to look backward. You have to look backward.
Yeah. And I think, so, you know, these aren't the exact questions that we have our clients reflect on during quarterly planning, but it sort of gets to the questions of, is today's business healthier than last year's, last quarter's, whatever? Are decisions getting easier, right? That's kind of one that a lot of our clients will spend some time with. Looking at whether you're a better leader, and if you feel like you're a better leader, in what areas. Because if there's areas where you feel like you're a better leader, there's probably areas where you'd like to improve.
Right. Yeah, true.
But a lot of times all we think about is, I still struggle with performance evaluations, whereas like before you wouldn't have performance evaluations because you didn't want to have difficult conversations. At least now you're having them.
Right. No, that's a perfect example of, you may not have, achieved the ultimate goal that you think you want to have achieved, but have we taken steps there? Because back to, no one just magically appears at the final destination. It is a process. It's always a process for everybody.
Yeah. And so this reminds me of, I want to say it was during a 531 that this came up. I don't think this came up in a group call that we'd had, but this came up in like a visioning goal setting call you had with a new client, is that there are a lot of outcomes with business. A lot, right? There's revenue. There is, there are all the different things that revenue can get you, but also there is the personal growth. I
don't know who it was. I know where I heard it, but I don't think, I wish I could remember. I wish I could attribute it correctly, but, and it may be, is it Jack Welch that did Good to Great? Is that, anyway,
I can Google it.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But basically it said, being an entrepreneur is actually just a self-improvement exercise.
Okay. According to Google, that was James C. Collins.
Okay, fine. Oh yeah. Yeah. Jim Collins. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Jim Collins. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but that really is it, right? That being an entrepreneur is more about a self-improvement exercise than anything else, because we're having to learn about ourselves. We're having to learn to adapt to all sorts of environments and situations that we wouldn't necessarily have chosen on our own, right? We're going to be encountering people, some of which we do choose, some of which we don't choose, right? I mean, there's a whole thing there. But when if you talk to anybody that is a long time or serial entrepreneur, they will tell you they have learned more about themselves in the process than anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, it becomes a huge element of it.
So then,
and if it's not, it's something to consider.
I was going to say, because that's really the thing is, I mean, I think the question you can say is, who's the business helping you to become? And if you don't like that person,
right,
then that's important to explore.
Well, and realize, I mean, that is also the beauty of it being your own business, because if it's helping you become someone that's not making you happy, then change, because you get to drive this bus.
Yeah.
You're the one that's in the driver's seat. And if you're like, I don't like this aspect of it, it's like, okay, then figure out how to minimize, eliminate, or delegate that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Right? That is the true entrepreneur. They are not replicating what already exists.
Right.
They are creating something that is uniquely theirs. It's the difference between, a franchise owner as opposed to someone who is creating something from scratch. Part of the franchise owner, and generally, not always, but a lot of times a franchise owner really is a business owner, because they're taking somebody else's systems and applying it and making it work, as opposed to someone starting with a completely blank page. Right? And, if you don't like what you drew, grab another blank page and do it again.
Yeah. So if somebody listening realizes that they're spending so much time chasing the finish line without ever noticing which ones, or acknowledging, I should say, which ones they've just crossed, what is one thing you would encourage them to do differently this week?
Well, so, we use a tool that we call the WRAP, the Weekly Review and Action Plan, with our clients. And part of that process specifically is the R, the review piece. And when we onboard people into the wrap process, the first couple questions are way more tactical kind of questions. What are you doing? What are you planning on doing? I mean, they're pretty tactical questions. The third question is where the meat of the question is, which is, what did you observe about the prior week, the week that you just completed? What did you observe? And it's, you've been reviewing wraps with me for years now as well. So, you and I both have, this plethora of examples. And it's really interesting when people first start, it's still very tactical what they observe. I mean, I want your feedback on this too, because you see things differently than I do. But it starts out very, very tactical. And at some point, there is some switch that flips, a thing that happens where all of a sudden they're actually reflecting and paying attention to that bigger impact. And that's often when they start seeing, oh, I just moved the goalpost on myself. I didn't let myself celebrate this thing. That they start seeing those pieces. And this is not something that we're asking them to spend hours and hours doing either a day or even a week. Most of them only take 15 to 30 minutes for the entire full process once a week. You and I do it for ourselves. We use it within our own business as well. And I can do the first couple questions really fast. The third question is always where my time is invested, because I really spend time thinking about, what did I observe? What did I learn? And the folks that when the switch flips, everything in their whole world flips as well, because they start paying attention to the fact that, oh, I did cross that finish line, right? I am moving the goalpost. Oh, I celebrated for about a half a second and then quickly moved on to all the things that I'm failing at, instead of saying, wait, that was pretty darn impressive.
Right.
Right. And so, I would say getting into that habit would be the thing I think that makes the biggest difference, because I've seen it for myself. I think you've seen it for yourself. We've seen it for our clients. Sometimes you need someone to help you in that process. Obviously, that's something that we're, happy to work with people on, but you don't necessarily need somebody else. I mean,
Yeah, well, and I think I'm going to have to disagree with you there, because, as you've been talking, I've also been, I'm listening to what you're saying, but I'm also kind of thinking through like what I have observed. And what I actually see is a lot of times they'll leave that question blank at the beginning because they've got nothing. Oh,
yeah, no, that's true too.
Right? They've got nothing. And then, we'll kind of prompt them. And at least what I do, right, is a lot of times I'll just start documenting what I've observed on their behalf. And then they'll go more tactical, right? Like, the fifth Saturday of every month is always really slow. Maybe we should consider closing early, right? Something like tactical like that.
Yeah.
Then oftentimes the shift actually comes as a result of the perspective that we call out. So I'm going to point out one client who has been a long time client. Like, she predates me. And for like 2 years, she has had a goal every quarter for more time for play. Some version of that. It's not always that specifically. Like, it's either like, I want more dedicated personal creative time, or I want to have more fun, or whatever. And I think it was like maybe a couple quarters ago, so maybe 6 months ago, she recognized that she'd actually done that. But her recognition came after going, I just feel like I'm stuck. I feel like I'm stagnating. Like, I'm not doing this forward and I'm not doing that forward. And I'm, my weeks are so compressed and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, but one of the goals that you've had for so long is more time for creativity. And now you've got yourself in a situation where you've set aside a full day every single week in this pursuit for creativity. You're taking a class, it takes a whole day, you're driving there, you're driving back, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, you're right, I have. Because of course my thing was like, you're acting like you have 5 full days in the office and you don't, you only have 4.
Right. Yeah.
But having 4 isn't because you're bad. It's because you actually prioritize this one thing that was so important to you. But that's the trade-off, right? You can't have that and then have this. And, she was then recognizing like, oh, she is more productive the other 4 days a week than she had been when she was working a 5-day work week because of having this creative outlet. But she was still beating herself up every single week until we were able to surface that observation for her. Then that flipped the switch. And now she's observing all the different ways that having that creative time set aside has benefited her.
You're right. And that often is the issue of not, if you don't have someone outside helping you observe, then it is easy to get in our own head. Right. And that does become a challenge.
Well, and I just think that, really kind of what this episode is about is it is always going to be easier for us to see how far we have left to go because we live with our vision every single day.
Right.
It really does take somebody else to bring our attention to how far we've come.
Yes. Both things are true.
Yeah. And so, one of the things that I love most about these conversations with you, Gwen, is that they don't end when we stop recording. They don't end for our listeners. I mean, we get emails, or at least I get emails all the time that's like, oh my gosh, like you kind of derailed my whole day, Tonya, because I listened to the episode and then that got me thinking about this and this and this. So if that's you, right, if today's conversation has gotten you thinking about how you define success in your own business, we have a way to keep that conversation going. And it's this email that Gwen sends out every single Friday called One Really Good Question. It is just one thoughtful question. It's one opportunity to spend 5 minutes reflecting on your week or reflecting kind of on how things are going, how far you've come, so that you can move forward with greater intention. Now, to sign up for that, you don't even have to talk to us, right? You just go to everydayeffectiveness.com/question, quick little form. I think you do your name and your email address, nothing big there. And then the next Friday, the email drops in your box. If you want to reply to it, awesome. Either me or Gwen will respond right back to you. And if you don't, that's okay. Another email comes the following Friday. So we will see you next time. And in the meantime, even if you don't sign up for One Really Good Question, I would encourage you to be thinking about the intersection of your ambition and what that says about the business you really want, and if that ambition is ever going to let you enjoy the business that you have.
Thanks for tuning in to The Business You Really Want with Gwen Bortner. I'm Tonya Kubo, reminding you that sustainable success is within reach. Make sure to subscribe to the show and visit thebusinessyoureallyWant.com for more resources. Until next time, keep dreaming big and acting with intention.